On the morning of July 14th, 2020, at 9:47 a.m., in a quiet suburb of Atlanta, Lisa Carter opened her Ring app and looked out into the backyard. Her 8-year-old daughter, Emily, was playing with the family dog. It was a sunny day. Everything looked normal. But a few minutes later, Emily disappeared. Police examined the records, the footage, every detail. There was nothing unusual in the Ring camera videos, at least not at first glance. A year later, a technology expert found a detail in those videos that no one had noticed before, and that detail changed everything. The morning of July 14th, 2020 began like any other Tuesday for the Carter family in suburban Atlanta. Lisa Carter, 34, a marketing director working from home during the COVID-19 pandemic, woke at 6:30 a.m. to prepare breakfast. Her husband, David, 36, a software engineer, was already at his computer for an early video conference with colleagues in California. Their daughter, Emily, 8 years old, was still asleep upstairs. The Carters had moved to their Brookhaven neighborhood 3 years earlier, attracted by its reputation for safety and excellent schools. Their 2-story colonial home sat on a quiet cul-de-sac where children rode bicycles and neighbors knew each other by name. In March 2020, shortly after pandemic lockdowns began, they'd installed a Ring doorbell system, one camera at the front door, one covering the driveway, and one aimed at the backyard where Emily spent most of her time playing. Lisa had insisted on the Ring system, with both parents working remotely and Emily doing virtual school. Being able to monitor their property from their phones seemed like essential security. Lisa checked the feeds constantly throughout the day, finding comfort in visual confirmation that her daughter was safe. Emily was a bright, energetic child who loved art, animals, and spending time outdoors with Max, their 4-year-old golden retriever. Her teacher described her as remarkably creative and kind. During the pandemic isolation, Max had become her primary companion, the one she talked to constantly during backyard adventures. Breakfast that morning was unremarkable. Cereal with strawberries for Emily, coffee and toast for Lisa, a protein shake for David, who barely looked up from his laptop between meetings. At 8:15 a.m., Emily asked if she could play in the backyard with Max before starting her online lessons. Lisa checked the weather. Sunny, 78 degrees, perfect, and agreed, reminding Emily to stay in the fenced backyard where the camera could see her. Emily grabbed Max's tennis ball and headed outside, the dog following eagerly. Lisa watched through the kitchen window as they ran into the yard, then returned to her laptop to prepare for her 9 a.m. video conference. She opened the Ring app one more time, confirmed the backyard camera showed Emily throwing the ball for Max, and felt that familiar reassurance that technology was keeping her daughter safe. What Lisa didn't know was that at 8:47 a.m., someone had accessed her Ring system remotely. The hacker had been planning this attack for 3 months, using sophisticated techniques to intercept the backyard camera feed. While Emily played innocently, the hacker was implementing final stages of a plan combining traditional kidnapping with cutting-edge artificial intelligence technology. At 9 a.m., Lisa joined her work video conference, laptop positioned on the kitchen counter. The meeting was scheduled until 10:30 a.m. to review quarterly marketing metrics. Lisa participated actively, presenting slides while her Ring app sat open on her phone beside her laptop. The backyard camera feed showing Emily's yellow butterfly t-shirt bright against green grass. At 9:11 a.m., while Lisa discussed conversion rates with coworkers, a man wearing a gray maintenance uniform approached the Carters' backyard through wooded area behind their property. The neighborhood backed onto a nature preserve, providing concealed access for anyone who knew the terrain. The man had been studying the Carter property for weeks, watching Emily's routines through their hacked cameras, noting precise times when both parents would be distracted by work calls. His name was Brian Sullivan, 42 years old, living alone in Decatur, 15 miles away. Sullivan worked as a freelance IT consultant specializing in home security systems. His legitimate work gave him expert knowledge of Ring doorbells, knowledge he'd been using for criminal purposes for 2 years. Sullivan had a sealed juvenile conviction for computer crimes and a recent restraining order from an ex-girlfriend who'd accused him of digital stalking. Sullivan approached the fence with practiced confidence, carrying a clipboard and wearing a fake ID badge. He'd timed his approach for exactly 9:11 a.m. because he knew Lisa had a standing Tuesday conference starting at 9 a.m. More importantly, he knew that at 9:11 a.m., Lisa's Ring camera would stop showing the real Emily and start showing a deepfake version. For 3 months, Sullivan had been collecting video footage of Emily playing in her backyard by downloading archived files from the hacked Ring system. Hundreds of hours showing Emily at different times, in different weather, wearing different outfits. He'd fed this footage into an artificial intelligence system designed to create deepfake videos, training the AI to understand exactly how Emily moved, played, and interacted with Max. The AI learned Emily's mannerisms with disturbing accuracy. She favored her right hand throwing balls, sometimes skipped when happy, periodically glanced toward the house checking if parents watched. The AI analyzed thousands of details and learned to replicate them perfectly. At 9:11 a.m., Sullivan's software activated a pre-recorded deepfake video and began streaming it to Lisa's Ring app as live feed. The deepfake was 4 minutes and 23 seconds long, carefully edited to loop seamlessly. The AI made subtle variations each loop, changing where balls landed, which direction Max ran, making it appear naturally random. While Lisa watched this artificial version on her screen, the real Emily was being approached by Sullivan, who'd entered through an unlocked gate he'd oiled during a previous nighttime visit. Emily was chasing Max when she noticed the uniformed man. She stopped, uncertain. Max barked once, but Sullivan tossed bacon-flavored jerky treats, immediately distracting the dog. With Max distracted, Sullivan approached Emily with a practiced, friendly smile. He showed his fake badge and said he was checking a security camera problem, that her mother had called him. Emily, taught to be polite to adults and recognizing the official-looking uniform, hesitated but didn't run. Sullivan asked her to show him where the camera was, getting her to move toward the back gate where his van waited. In 73 seconds, Sullivan got Emily to the yard's back, grabbed her, covered her mouth, and carried her struggling through the gate to his white cargo van. Max, distracted by treats, didn't bark immediately. By the time the dog realized something was wrong and began barking frantically, Sullivan had Emily in his van and was driving away. Inside, Lisa reviewed her PowerPoint, occasionally glancing at her Ring app where deepfake Emily continued playing peacefully. The AI version waved at the camera at 9:13 a.m., programmed because Sullivan's analysis showed real. Emily waved approximately every 7 to 9 minutes when parents watched. Lisa saw her daughter wave and felt reassured. Everything was fine. She returned attention to the meeting, unaware that the daughter she thought she was watching was already 2 miles from home. At 9:23 a.m., Susan Reynolds, the Carters' next-door neighbor, looked out her kitchen window while washing dishes. Susan was a retired schoolteacher, 67, who'd lived in the neighborhood 15 years. She'd watched Emily grow up, given her Halloween cookies, waved to her countless times. What Susan saw confused her. The Carters' backyard appeared completely empty. No Emily. No Max. The back gate was open, swinging in the breeze. Susan frowned, worried Max might escape. She dried her hands and called Lisa. Susan dialed at 9:24 a.m. Lisa's phone rang, interrupting the conference. "Hi, Susan, is everything okay? Lisa, your back gate is open. I wanted to let you know in case Max gets out." Lisa glanced at her Ring app showing Emily playing with Max. "That's strange, the gate looks closed, are you sure?" "I'm looking right at it from my window. It's definitely open. And I don't see Emily or Max in the yard at all." Lisa looked more carefully. The Ring app clearly showed Emily throwing a ball and Max running after it. "Susan, I'm watching them right now on my camera. They're both there. Maybe you're looking at a different angle." Pause. Susan looked again. The backyard was definitely empty. "Lisa, I promise you, there's no one in your backyard right now." Lisa felt anxiety flutter but pushed it down. She trusted her technology. The Ring camera had never malfunctioned. "Susan, I appreciate you checking, but I can see my daughter on the screen. She's fine. But thanks for the gate warning." "Okay," Susan said uncertainly. "If you're sure." "I'm sure. Thanks, Susan." Lisa hung up and returned to her conference, though Susan's call had planted worry. She watched her Ring app more carefully. Emily appeared normal, playing, picking flowers. Lisa told herself Susan must have been mistaken. But Susan wasn't confused. She stood at her window, staring at the empty backyard, troubled. She knew what she was seeing. The yard was empty. But Lisa had been so certain her camera showed Emily safely playing. Susan made a decision. She'd walk over and show Lisa directly that the backyard was empty. Maybe Lisa's camera was showing old footage. Susan put on shoes, walked out, crossed to the Carter house and rang the doorbell at 9:29 a.m. The front Ring doorbell worked perfectly, not having been hacked. It showed Susan's face on Lisa's app. Lisa apologized to colleagues and went to answer. Susan, what's wrong? Lisa, please come look at your backyard with me. I promise you Emily is not there. The urgency in Susan's voice triggered Lisa's maternal instincts. Okay, let me check. Lisa walked quickly toward the back door, Susan following. Lisa opened the door and stepped onto the patio. The backyard was empty, completely empty. The gate was open. Max was lying near the fence, whining. Emily was nowhere. Lisa's world tilted. Her phone still showed Emily playing peacefully, but her eyes saw an empty yard. The disconnect was so complete that for several seconds Lisa couldn't process what was happening. Emily! Lisa screamed. She ran into the yard, checking behind the playhouse, behind trees, every corner. Emily! Emily! Max ran to Lisa, barking urgently, then back toward the open gate, clearly trying to communicate something. Where is she? Lisa's voice cracked. She spun to Susan. Where's my daughter? I don't know. I saw the gate open and called you about 5 minutes ago. 5 minutes. Emily could be anywhere. Lisa looked at her phone again. The Ring app still showed her daughter playing, but now Lisa could see what she'd missed. Movements were slightly repetitive. The ball landed in almost the same spot. Emily's gestures had subtle sameness. This wasn't real. This wasn't live. David! Lisa ran toward the house, screaming, David! Emily's gone! David burst from his office, confused. What happened? Emily's gone. She's not in the backyard. The camera's showing her, but she's not there. David's mind tried to find logic. She probably went inside. She's not in the house. Lisa was crying now. I was watching her on the camera, but she's not there. David ran to the backyard, saw the empty space, the open gate. His face went pale. He ran back inside, searching frantically, calling Emily's name, checking every room. Lisa followed, both parents running through their home, panic escalating with every empty room. At 9:34 a.m., Lisa called 911 with shaking hands. The emergency dispatcher heard a mother's voice on hysteria's edge. My daughter is missing. She was in our backyard and now she's gone. Please help us. The dispatcher began asking essential questions while alerting police. How old? When last seen? What was she wearing? Have you searched? Lisa answered through shaking voice. Emily was 8. She'd been in the backyard playing. Yellow butterfly t-shirt and blue shorts. Yes, they'd searched everywhere. The gate was open. She was gone. The dispatcher assured Lisa police were being dispatched immediately. In missing children cases, every second mattered. The first officer arrived at 9:41 a.m., 7 minutes after Lisa's call. Officer Michael Torres, a 10-year veteran with 2 children of his own, was met at the door by both frantic parents and their neighbor. Torres had responded to dozens of missing child calls. Most ended with the child found safe nearby. But as Torres listened to Lisa describe what happened, something struck him as unusual. The mother kept saying she'd been watching her daughter on a security camera that showed the child playing even after she'd disappeared. Ma'am, show me this camera footage. Lisa held up her phone, showing the Ring app. The backyard feed was still displaying Emily playing. Though Lisa now realized the video had been looping, Torres looked at the screen, then at the actual backyard through windows. The yard was empty. The feed showed a child playing. The disconnect was immediate and obvious. Ma'am, this footage isn't showing what's happening now. When was this recorded? It's supposed to be live, but she's not there. Someone did something to the camera. Torres knew about security systems and how they could be compromised. If someone had hacked this family's camera to show false footage while the child was taken, this wasn't a wandering child. This was possible abduction, carefully planned, and the clock was ticking. Ma'am, someone might have hacked your camera system. This is very serious. I'm calling for backup. The implication hit Lisa like a physical blow. If the camera had been hacked, if someone had deliberately shown false footage, someone had kidnapped her daughter. Someone had planned this. Torres immediately radioed for backup, supervisors, detectives specializing in child abduction. This wasn't a wandering child case. This was something much worse. By 10:00 a.m., 6 police cars were parked on the cul-de-sac, drawing concerned neighbors. Detective James Chen, specialist in child abduction cases, arrived to take command. Chen was 38, had worked law enforcement 16 years, and knew the first hours were critical. Statistics showed if an abducted child wasn't found within 3 hours, chances of finding them alive dropped dramatically. For 47 minutes from 9:11 a.m. to 9:58 a.m., the app had shown AI-generated video while real Emily was being kidnapped. Chen had never encountered anything like this. He'd seen cases where cameras were disabled, but never where feeds were replaced with fake video sophisticated enough to fool a parent. This suggested technical expertise and planning that was deeply troubling. "Mrs. Carter, has anyone had access to your Ring system besides you and your husband? Any suspicious links or emails recently?" Lisa shook her head. She and David were the only ones with the password. She received dozens of emails daily. Had she clicked something suspicious? She couldn't specifically remember, but couldn't swear she hadn't. Chen called in the digital forensics team. If the Ring had been hacked, there would be digital evidence, but analysis would take time they didn't have. While Chen coordinated the investigation, other officers canvassed the neighborhood. Had anyone seen an 8-year-old in a yellow shirt? Unfamiliar vehicles? Anything unusual? Most neighbors hadn't seen anything, focused on work-from-home computers. But the canvass produced one crucial lead. A neighbor 2 houses down had his own security camera. His driveway camera had captured a white cargo van with no markings driving slowly past the Carter house at 8:52 a.m., then again at 9:08 a.m. going the opposite direction. At 9:10 a.m., the van had pulled over near the nature preserve entrance, staying approximately 3 minutes before driving away. The timing was damning. The van had been positioned near the preserve, which backed onto the Carter property precisely when Emily was taken. Chen immediately put out a BOLO alert for the white van. At 10:47 a.m., the FBI Atlanta field office received notification. Special Agent Sarah Morrison, specializing in child abduction cases, was assigned. Morrison arrived at 11:15 a.m. and recognized this case had unusual elements requiring specialized handling. The Ring hack suggested a perpetrator with significant technical skills. Morrison contacted the FBI Cybercrime Division for urgent analysis. Within an hour, specialists were remotely accessing the Carter's router and Ring cloud storage. What they found was sophisticated and disturbing. The hacker had gained access 3 months earlier, using a phishing email appearing to come from Amazon. Lisa had clicked a link thinking it was a security update, unknowingly installing malware giving complete Ring access. For 3 months, the hacker had been downloading video of Emily playing. FBI analysts found over 200 hours of archived video accessed by an outside user, footage used to train the AI generating the deepfake. More disturbing, the Carter family wasn't the only target. The same hacker had accessed at least 6 other Ring systems in Atlanta, all belonging to families with young children, systematically downloading videos, presumably creating more deepfakes. If you're finding this investigation compelling, subscribe and like this video to help bring attention to cases like Emily's. At 12:30 p.m., roughly 3.5 hours after Emily was taken, the FBI issued an Amber Alert. Emily's photo appeared on screens across the southeastern United States. The alert described Emily as 4 feet 2 inches, 55 pounds, brown hair, brown eyes, last seen wearing a yellow butterfly t-shirt and blue shorts. The FBI tip line began receiving calls immediately. Most would be well-intentioned but unhelpful, but each had to be investigated. While law enforcement mobilized, Lisa and David sat surrounded by officers and agents, experiencing the worst hours of their lives. The not knowing was torture. Where was their daughter? Who had taken her? Was she scared? Hurt? Still alive? Lisa couldn't stop checking her Ring app, even knowing the morning footage had been fake. She replayed the morning in her mind, torturing herself with things she should have done differently. She should have checked on Emily in person. She should have listened to Susan immediately. She should have known something was wrong. At 2:15 p.m., the FBI's technical team made a breakthrough. By examining the malware, they traced the digital signature back to its source. The hacker had made one mistake. When installing the malware, he'd used an IP address not fully anonymized. The FBI traced it to an internet provider in suburban Atlanta, then to a specific customer account. The account belonged to Brian Sullivan, 42, living in Decatur, approximately 15 miles from the Carter home. Sullivan had no serious criminal record in standard checks, but deeper investigation found a sealed juvenile record for computer crimes and a recent restraining order from an ex-girlfriend who'd accused him of stalking. Significantly, Sullivan worked as a freelance IT consultant specializing in home security systems. His work gave him expert Ring knowledge, and his client list included numerous Atlanta families. At 2:47 p.m., FBI agents and Atlanta SWAT surrounded Sullivan's apartment complex. They obtained an emergency warrant and served it at 2:52 p.m., breaking down Sullivan's door. The apartment was empty. Sullivan wasn't there. But what agents found confirmed their fears and provided hope for finding Emily. Sullivan's apartment was filled with computer equipment, multiple monitors, servers, hard drives. One computer was running, displaying multiple ring feeds from different families. Sullivan had been monitoring at least a dozen homes simultaneously, watching children, collecting footage, preparing more attacks. More importantly, agents found evidence of current activities. A laptop showed a map with a route from Atlanta to rural North Georgia, approximately 90 miles away. Written notes described a safe house in the mountains where Sullivan claimed he could keep subjects for extended observation. The FBI immediately focused resources on the location. It was a cabin in Chattahoochee National Forest, accessible only by rough dirt road, isolated by miles of wilderness. Morrison coordinated with Georgia Bureau of Investigation and local sheriffs for a rescue operation. At 3:34 p.m., a helicopter carrying FBI tactical agents lifted off, heading toward the coordinates. The flight would take 40 minutes. Ground units were also mobilized, though rough terrain meant longer arrival. FBI forensic specialists continued analyzing Sullivan's apartment, discovering journals documenting his crimes and reasoning. The journals revealed Sullivan had been planning attacks like this for over 2 years, seeing himself as conducting experiments in AI and human perception. He wrote about his deepfakes with pride, describing them as perfect simulations. Sullivan's journals also revealed something giving investigators hope. He kept victims alive. Sullivan's motivation wasn't immediate violence, but long-term behavioral observation. Sullivan had been keeping her in the room, hadn't hurt her, had been feeding her while documenting her behavior for his research. Morrison received the news at 4:26 p.m. and immediately called the Carter home. Lisa answered on the first ring. "Mrs. Carter, this is Agent Morrison. We have Emily. She's safe. She's alive. We're bringing her home." The sound Lisa made was between a sob and a scream, compressed terror transforming instantly into overwhelming relief. David grabbed the phone while Lisa collapsed onto the couch, crying harder than she'd ever cried, but for the first time that day crying from happiness rather than fear. Emily was airlifted to an Atlanta hospital, arriving at 5:47 p.m. Her parents met her there, the reunion captured by news cameras. The footage of the Carters embracing their daughter, all three crying, became one of 2020's most widely shared images. Medical examinations confirmed Emily was physically unharmed. Sullivan hadn't assaulted her. He'd kept her in the room, given her food, water, even toys and books. From Emily's perspective, she'd been terrified and confused, but not physically injured. Psychological trauma would require therapy, but doctors were optimistic about recovery. Brian Sullivan was arrested at the cabin and transported to Atlanta to face federal charges: kidnapping, computer fraud, wire fraud, child exploitation, multiple cybercrime violations. Evidence was overwhelming. Sullivan's computers contained documentation of his crimes, deepfakes he'd created, plans, other families he'd targeted. Sullivan's interrogation began that evening. Morrison led questioning, and Sullivan proved surprisingly willing to talk. He showed no remorse but seemed almost proud of his technical accomplishments, describing in detail how he'd created the deepfake, trained the AI using months of footage, timed his attack to coincide with Lisa's meeting. Sullivan also revealed information about other planned attacks. He'd been preparing to kidnap children from 5 other families whose ring systems he'd compromised. The FBI immediately contacted these families, warned them, and arranged enhanced protection. Sullivan's background revealed how he'd operated undetected. As a freelance consultant, he had legitimate security system access. He'd worked with some families he later targeted, been invited into their homes, used those opportunities to gather information and plant access points. The revelation sent shockwaves through the home security industry. Ring's parent company, Amazon, issued a statement expressing horror and announcing immediate security upgrades. The company faced questions about whether their protocols had been adequate. Technology experts weighed in on how Sullivan created his deepfake. The consensus was that while requiring significant expertise, it wasn't beyond someone with Sullivan's skills. AI tools for creating deep fakes were becoming increasingly accessible, and Sullivan had demonstrated how they could be weaponized. For the Carters, the days following Emily's rescue were complicated. Relief, trauma, anger. They had their daughter back, which was all that mattered. But the violation, the knowledge someone had watched their family for months, created vulnerability that wouldn't easily heal. The family disconnected their Ring system immediately, installing a traditional security system without internet connectivity. Lisa found herself unable to trust any technology with cameras or internet. Tools supposed to make her feel safe had been turned into weapons. Emily began therapy with a child psychologist specializing in trauma. The therapist reported Emily was resilient, that children often recovered better than expected, but the kidnapping would likely affect her in ways not fully apparent for years. Emily had nightmares. She became clingy, not wanting parents out of sight. Simple things like playing in the backyard became loaded with anxiety. The Carter family's experience became national news. Journalists wanted interviews. Documentary producers wanted to tell their story. True crime podcasts devoted episodes to the case. The attention was overwhelming, but Lisa and David agreed to some interviews because other families needed to understand the risks. In one television interview, Lisa addressed the camera. "We thought we were being careful. We thought technology made us safer. But we learned that if someone with bad intentions understands technology better than you do, it becomes a weapon. I watched a fake video of my daughter for 47 minutes and never questioned it because I believed the camera wouldn't lie to me." Sullivan's trial began in federal court in March 2021, 9 months after Emily's kidnapping. The prosecution presented overwhelming evidence: his computers containing deep fakes and planning documents, journals describing crimes, confession to FBI agents, Emily's testimony, expert analysis of the Ring hacks. Sullivan's defense focused on mental health, arguing psychological conditions impaired his judgment. A psychologist testified about Sullivan's antisocial personality disorder and inability to process empathy. The prosecution countered that Sullivan's extensive planning, ability to maintain normal facade, and sophisticated technology understanding demonstrated he knew exactly what he was doing. His crimes weren't impaired judgment, but calculated malice. The jury deliberated less than 4 hours before returning guilty verdicts on all charges. The evidence had been clear and comprehensive. The sentencing hearing was in May 2021. Prosecutors recommended 40 years without parole. Lisa provided a victim impact statement. "Brian Sullivan didn't just take my daughter for 7 hours. He took something from our whole family we'll never fully get back. The sense of safety, the ability to trust our own eyes. Every time I look at Emily, I'm grateful she's alive. But I also remember those 47 minutes when I was watching artificial intelligence pretend to be her. That memory will never go away." The judge sentenced Sullivan to 40 years in federal prison, the maximum penalty. Sullivan showed no emotion as the sentence was read. The resolution prompted significant changes in home security companies. Ring implemented mandatory two-factor authentication, making it much harder for hackers to gain access. The company deployed AI systems designed to detect when video feeds were being manipulated, adding another layer of security to prevent future deepfake attacks like the one Sullivan had used. Other manufacturers followed with their own upgrades. Apple, Google, and others announced initiatives to better protect customers and educate users about cybersecurity. Industry standards were developed for how cameras should encrypt and authenticate video feeds, creating a new baseline for security in the smart home industry. Law enforcement agencies also changed training based on lessons from Emily's case. Officers and FBI agents received specialized training on deepfake technology and how to identify when security footage might have been manipulated. Investigators learned to be more skeptical of camera evidence and to verify through multiple independent sources before accepting footage as reliable. The broader conversation about artificial intelligence and its potential for misuse extended beyond just home security. Lawmakers began discussing regulations for deepfake technology, debating whether there should be restrictions on who could access the AI tools needed to create convincing fake videos. Technology companies that developed AI systems faced increasing questions about their responsibility to prevent malicious uses of their products. Emily's case became a catalyst for these discussions, a real-world example of how AI could be weaponized in ways most people had never considered. The technology that made Sullivan's crime possible wasn't science fiction. It was readily available to anyone with sufficient technical knowledge and malicious intent. For the Carters, life eventually returned to something resembling normalcy, though they were forever changed by their experience. Emily continued therapy sessions and gradually regained her confidence and sense of security, though she remained more cautious than she'd been before the kidnapping. Lisa returned to work but couldn't fully shake the anxiety that came from knowing how vulnerable families were in the digital age. David threw himself into cybersecurity advocacy, using his software engineering expertise to educate other families about protecting their smart home devices from similar attacks. In 2022, 2 years after Emily's kidnapping, the Carter family participated in a comprehensive documentary about deepfake technology and its criminal applications. The documentary included interviews with technology experts, law enforcement officials, cybersecurity specialists, and multiple families who had been victimized by various forms of cybercrime. The film made powerful arguments for better regulation and security standards in the smart home industry. During one particularly poignant interview for the documentary, Emily, now 10 years old and remarkably articulate about her experience, said something that captured the complexity of the technology debate. "The camera that was supposed to keep me safe was how the bad man took me. But it was also cameras from other houses that helped the police find me. So technology isn't good or bad. It's how people use it." The wisdom in those words, coming from a child who had been victimized by technology but had also been saved by it, resonated deeply with many who watched the documentary. The issue wasn't whether to trust technology, but rather how to use it responsibly and how to protect against those who would exploit it for harmful purposes. Sullivan's case also prompted broader examination of how people with technical expertise could use their professional skills for criminal purposes. Sullivan had been a legitimate IT consultant, someone that families had trusted in their homes, and he'd used that trust and his professional knowledge to plan and execute attacks. The case highlighted the need for better background checks and ongoing monitoring of people who worked in fields that gave them access to sensitive systems and vulnerable populations. The FBI opened extensive investigations into whether Sullivan had accomplices or whether other criminals might be using similar techniques. While the investigation found no evidence that Sullivan had worked with others, it did identify several online communities where individuals with technical skills discussed methods for hacking smart home devices. Some of these discussions were purely theoretical or academic in nature, but others appeared to be sharing techniques specifically for criminal purposes. Law enforcement agencies began monitoring these communities more closely, attempting to identify potential threats before they could materialize into actual crimes. In the years following Sullivan's conviction, several additional cases emerged of criminals attempting to use hacked security cameras for various illegal purposes. None were as sophisticated as Sullivan's deepfake attack on the Carter family, but the cases demonstrated that he hadn't been unique in recognizing the vulnerabilities of smart home systems. Each new case reinforced the importance of the security upgrades that had been implemented industry-wide in response to Emily's kidnapping. Ring and other security camera companies began offering free cybersecurity consultations to their customers, helping families understand how to protect their systems from hacking attempts. These consultations covered important topics like choosing strong passwords that couldn't be easily guessed, recognizing phishing attempts disguised as legitimate communications, setting up two-factor authentication for additional security layers, and understanding what permissions various apps and devices required, and why. Consumer education became recognized as a crucial component of digital security, not just technical safeguards built into the devices themselves. The Carter family's advocacy work extended to testifying before congressional committees about the need for better regulation of smart home devices and artificial intelligence technology. Lisa and David spoke passionately about their experience to lawmakers examining cybersecurity issues, their testimony bringing an emotional human dimension to what might otherwise have been abstract policy discussions. Members of Congress who heard the Carters speak about watching a fake version of their daughter while she was being kidnapped understood in visceral terms why these issues mattered and why regulation was necessary, even if it might slow innovation. Some meaningful legislation resulted from these advocacy efforts. Federal laws were passed requiring smart home device manufacturers to meet minimum security standards to provide clear and prominent disclosure to customers about what data their devices collected and how that data was stored and protected, and to report security breaches to authorities within specific timeframes so that potential victims could be warned. The laws weren't perfect and faced criticism from both consumer advocates who wanted stronger protections and industry groups concerned about regulatory burden, but they represented meaningful progress toward a safer digital ecosystem. Emily grew up with the knowledge that her kidnapping had sparked important changes in technology policy and security practices, that her terrible experience had perhaps prevented other children from experiencing similar trauma. Her parents were careful not to burden her with feeling responsible for advocacy work. That was their choice, not her obligation. But they also didn't hide from her the positive impact that sharing their story had created. Emily's remarkable resilience and her willingness to discuss her experience in age-appropriate ways contributed significantly to public understanding of these complex issues. By 2024, 4 years after her kidnapping, Emily was 12 years old and remarkably well-adjusted considering what she'd been through. She still saw a therapist occasionally, but had successfully processed much of the trauma. She'd developed a genuine interest in computer science and cybersecurity, inspired partly by wanting to understand the technology that had been used against her family. Her parents supported this interest enthusiastically while making sure she understood both the positive potential and negative risks of powerful technology. The Ring doorbell that had been hacked to show a fake version of Emily remained in FBI evidence storage as part of Sullivan's permanent case file. The device itself was just a piece of plastic and electronics, functionally identical to millions of other units installed in homes across America. But it had played a central role in a crime that exposed fundamental vulnerabilities in how millions of people attempted to protect their families, and it served as a tangible reminder that security was about much more than just having the right gadgets and devices. The deepfake video of Emily that Sullivan had created was also preserved as evidence in secure storage, though access to it was strictly controlled and limited to law enforcement and authorized researchers. Technology experts continued to study the video years later to understand Sullivan's techniques in detail and to develop better methods for detecting deepfakes in security footage. The video was profoundly disturbing to watch because of how realistic it appeared, how easily it had fooled Emily's mother despite her intimate knowledge of her daughter's mannerisms, and what it represented about the state of artificial intelligence technology, even back in 2020. Experts noted with growing concern that deepfake technology had improved dramatically since Sullivan created his video of Emily. By 2024, creating a convincing deepfake required significantly less technical expertise than it had 4 years earlier, and could be accomplished much more quickly using widely available tools. This democratization of powerful technology created new concerns about how it might be misused for everything from financial fraud to political manipulation to crimes like Sullivan had committed. Emily Carter's case served as an ongoing warning about threats that were becoming easier to execute as technology continued to evolve rapidly. The home security industry continued adapting to emerging threats. New detection systems were developed specifically designed to identify deepfakes in security camera feeds, using artificial intelligence to combat artificial intelligence in an ongoing technological arms race. These systems analyzed video in real time, looking for subtle artifacts that indicated manipulation, checking whether lighting and shadows were physically consistent with the reported environment, and verifying that movements and physics followed natural laws rather than appearing artificially generated. Consumer awareness of deepfake threats had increased significantly in the years following Emily's case. Families who installed security cameras were more likely to implement strong security practices, to regularly update their devices with the latest security patches, and to be appropriately skeptical of anything that seemed even slightly off about their camera feeds. The blind trust in technology that had allowed Sullivan to succeed was gradually being replaced by informed caution and healthy skepticism, which was ultimately a more mature approach, even if it came at the cost of some innocence about what technology could and couldn't do. Lisa Carter sometimes reflected on the profound irony that she had installed the Ring doorbell system specifically because she wanted to make her family safer and more secure, only to have that very system become the primary tool used to kidnap her daughter. But Lisa also acknowledged that without the digital evidence found in Sullivan's apartment, including the records of other Ring camera systems he had compromised, Emily might not have been found as quickly as she was, if at all. Technology had both endangered her daughter and ultimately helped save her, which felt like an appropriate if uncomfortable metaphor for the modern world's relationship with digital tools. The question Lisa had posed in her powerful victim impact statement at Sullivan's sentencing, about whether society could trust its own eyes when looking at screens showing what purported to be reality, remained deeply relevant years later. As deepfake technology became more sophisticated and more accessible to ordinary people with no specialized training, society had to grapple with a future where video evidence couldn't necessarily be trusted, where seeing something on a screen didn't automatically guarantee it was real, where artificial intelligence could seamlessly replace reality in ways that human perception simply couldn't detect without technological assistance. Emily's kidnapping was ultimately just one case, one family's trauma, but it represented much broader challenges that society was only beginning to face in the digital age. The same technologies that connected people across vast distances and made daily life more convenient and efficient also created new vulnerabilities and new ways for malicious actors to cause profound harm. Learning to navigate these challenges successfully would require a sustained combination of better technology, stronger and smarter regulations, improved public education about digital risks, and constant individual vigilance. The Carter family's story served simultaneously as a stark warning about what could go wrong, and as an inspiring testament to human resilience in the face of technological threats. They had experienced every parent's absolute worst nightmare, and had somehow survived it with their family intact. Emily had been violently taken from her home, but had ultimately been brought back safely. The technology that failed catastrophically to protect her had, through the evidence it preserved and the digital trails it created, ultimately helped save her life. And in the difficult aftermath, the family had found genuine purpose in helping others understand these threats and prepare for them more effectively. 4 years after that terrible July morning, when Lisa watched an AI-generated fake version of her daughter, while the real Emily was being driven away in a van, the Carter family was still healing from deep wounds, but had definitively found a way forward. They lived with enhanced awareness of digital threats and vulnerabilities, but had consciously chosen not to let fear and paranoia completely paralyze them or prevent them from living full lives. They continued to use technology in their daily lives, but approached it with informed caution rather than blind trust. They had learned through bitter experience that safety and security required constant vigilance and critical thinking, and that trust in any system or tool had to be thoughtfully balanced with independent verification. The Ring doorbell that had sat at the center of their family's nightmare was long gone, disconnected, and discarded within days of Emily's safe return. It had been replaced by a traditional wired security system that didn't rely on internet connectivity, that couldn't be accessed remotely by hackers, that would simply sound a loud alarm if doors or windows were unexpectedly opened, but wouldn't record video or create any kind of digital records that could potentially be compromised. But the lessons about trusting technology, about the delicate balance between convenience and security, about the ways that innovations designed specifically to help can sometimes be turned into weapons that harm. Those lessons remained permanently with the Carter family and with everyone who heard their harrowing story. Lisa sometimes found herself walking past the spot on their front door frame where the Ring doorbell had been mounted, and in those moments she couldn't help but remember those 47 terrible minutes when she had genuinely believed everything was fine and normal, while her entire world was actually being torn violently apart. The memory would always be painful, a permanent scar on her psyche that would never completely fade, but it also served as a powerful reminder of what truly mattered most in life. Not the technological tools and gadgets that claimed to keep families safe, but rather the actual physical presence of her daughter Emily, healthy, growing, thriving, safe, right there in their home, exactly where she belonged. Brian Sullivan remained in federal prison, serving his 40-year sentence in relative obscurity, relevant to almost no one except his direct victims and the law enforcement officers who had investigated his crimes. But the changes his actions had sparked continued rippling outward through society year after year, profoundly affecting how millions of people thought about technology, security, privacy, and the hidden price of convenience in a world where artificial intelligence could replicate reality so convincingly that even a loving mother could not reliably tell the difference between her real daughter and a sophisticated digital copy. The story of Emily Carter's kidnapping would be told and retold countless times in various formats over the years: newspaper articles, television news segments, true crime documentaries, cybersecurity training materials, congressional testimony, academic research papers. Each retelling served its own distinct purpose, whether to inform the public, to warn about emerging threats, to inspire protective changes in technology and policy, or to illustrate important principles about the relationship between humanity and the powerful tools we create. The case had become a permanent part of the larger ongoing conversation about humanity's complex relationship with technology, a cautionary tale about the dangers of trusting machines more than our own instincts and judgment, and a sobering reminder that in our increasingly digital age, the old saying, "seeing is believing," was no longer reliably true.